Well, friends, so let's disconnect from the music and move on to our topic. Just in case, let me introduce myself since the recording has started. My name is Dmitry Polzunov. I really love the affiliate programs and network business industry. I have been involved in it for almost 19 years. I can say that it is the most wonderful industry that I have personally seen. It is very comprehensive. It is amazing, and at the same time, it provides opportunities for very different people to realize themselves. That's why I sincerely love this industry. I can confidently say that I have some success there, and there are many different aspects. There are people who can persuade others simply with their assertiveness, their energy, their certain something, and so on. With anything, that is, it happens. I admit that Evgeny Shcherbina is like that. For example, he is so imposing and speaks so convincingly that many questions, for instance, you don't even want to ask him. For example, yes, and there are, well, these are separate aspects, separate moments, natural, sometimes charisma, sometimes other factors, and so on. But I would like to say this. Being persuasive in any conversation, in any discussion, is very important. And therefore, friends, today we will work with a module such as the objection handling system. Objection handling. This is very important because at this stage, the deal most often happens. That is, you steer the conversation in the direction you need. And that's why we will talk about this today. I will say right away, our text will be partly in Russian, partly in English, so that our international partners can also join our sessions and watch them at least in recordings. So our session will be structured as follows. Friends, so I will first explain the basics, and during the process, please throw in lots and lots of objections that you encounter. Then we will return to them and organize them. Our esteemed moderator will record all your objections, and many of them will form the basis of the so-called frequently asked questions that will be prepared for all partners on the company's website. Therefore, let me say right away what we are doing. Today, we are figuring it out not only for ourselves, but also for many, many who will come after us. And in doing so, we are honing our skills, we will develop, and so on. And our topic today is handling objections. And under the thesis will be that the ability to listen is half the success. So let's move on. That is objection, handling, and listening. And for hacks in this, and here's what I would like to say. Many people, please write in the chat if you think the same or thought the same. Many people think that success in negotiations and MLM is not for everyone. That is, I often hear that I won't succeed. This is not for me. This is not my thing. It's not my thing. Not my strong suit, and so on. Accordingly, it arises. Please write in the chat if you sincerely believe that you won't be able to sign people up, won't be able to form teams, simply because for some reason you are not like that. The reasons will vary from I'm more well-mannered, or I'm not as assertive, and so on. There are many options. I don't like talking to people, wonderfully so. Yura jokes I have, by the way, yes, seriously. Yura is a very person who communicates easily. He is very pleasant. Not a conversationalist at all, but Yuri is difficult. But as they say, to push through, that is, for example, to close it, Yura. Really tell me if it's justified, that is. Yura is so, but his tone is soft, kind, very pleasant, a sociable person. And accordingly, but he can't manage to wait. for some reasons. And sometimes you feel like giving up. And Tatiana, yes, I mean, I can overdo it or send someone away, for example. Yes, that is, well, we don't know our limits, so to speak. That is, at first we are kind, then suddenly, oh, so that's how it is. Look, many people have this thesis. You need to be born lively, and charismatic. You understand? Yes, gods, we are charismatic, able to talk someone into something and have a bit of an adventurous streak. You understand? About professionals in the field of MLM, salespeople, and so on. And many people say that it's not for me because I'm not like that. And I can tell my story. I'm definitely not like that. That is, I am an engineer myself. I come from a family where there wasn't a single salesperson. And my mother is a teacher. My father is an engineer. Accordingly, my grandfather is an engineer. My grandmother is a teacher. On the other side, then my grandfather is an engineer and my grandmother, yes, a medical doctor. Accordingly, the entire intelligentsia and absolutely all generations have a poor view of sales. And in this story, I had no chances except to become the same kind of representative of the intelligentsia. And that's wonderful. But because I was not born and I was not raised in the marketplace or something like that in some sort of image, a person who can sell beautifully. And in fact, I was sure it wouldn't work out. But then I found out that these moments are not an innate, miraculous trait. It's just a skill that can be calmly developed. And most importantly, for more balanced people, this skill even becomes more effective. Let's all try to move on. Negotiations, sales negotiations, and so on. They can also vary. In terms of effectiveness, therefore, negotiations are a system that is very easy to understand and master. It can be understood and mastered. You don't have to be magical. For example, Alicia writes, if you knew how much energy Alicia has, I just feel that from Alicia, it's like this. Like in Tchaikovsky's work, by Korny Tchaikovsky, to be precise. Yes, where two little foxes took matches and set the blue sea on fire. Yes, like that. Alicia can ignite, I don't know, even the ocean, I think, because she is very energetic. But I don't have the ability to be that energetic. But I know something else. And I can teach each of you this because being energetic is something you need to be born with. But negotiations, that's a system. We will master it now. Negotiation is a system that can be understood and mastered. This is important. So let's look. The first point, it is necessary to identify the needs of the potential negotiator, the potential partner, the one we are communicating with. A very important point. So, look, we have several times in schools, we have discussed how to identify needs, but let's make it a fairly simple point. With most of your acquaintances, you roughly know their needs. That is, if you communicate with a person from time to time, you know that the person, for example, has taken a mortgage, or has sent their child to school, or has bought a car on credit, or something else. Well, people usually share some of their impressions, and you can assume what needs a person might have. With unfamiliar people, we will indeed learn in separate sessions, maybe not even in public ones, but in some closed trainings, how to work with unfamiliar people. Therefore, in this regard, we will have separate training. But nevertheless, you know the needs of those people who are your acquaintances, So let's take, for example, some abstract goal. All right. Now, look, we need to understand that there are several rules for communicating with our potential partner. All objections need to be listened to and show that you are interested in them. Remembered? That is, for example, every voiced objection should be localized. That is, make it as short as possible. And concise. Remembered, right? Whoever is doing well is taking notes. It's important to respond concisely and to the point, providing a substantial argument. And before voicing the next argument, it's important to ensure that the previous one was heard and correctly understood. The potential partner should agree with your arguments. Look, let's break it down with a simple example. Let's play a game. Make some objection. For example, I say, Artem, you're in the chat. I tell you, we have such a great business. Let's engage in it together. Throw me some objections. Besides, so what? Like, look, hey, am I understanding correctly, Artem? Well, let's take this and I don't believe it. I mean, great. And Artem, yes, wait, you all cake. When it was necessary to write many objections so that they were all recorded in a list, wonderful. Now let's use an example, because it doesn't happen that you meet with a person and they just suddenly dumped on you. Here's a very, very pyramid. Look, am I understanding correctly? That by the word pyramid, you mean that it's a scheme to collect money and accordingly give nothing in return. And look, we need faith. Look, if we start now, yes, everything in this world is a pyramid. Look at the colonel. There are lieutenant colonels. The lieutenant colonel has majors. Above the colonel is a general. This is all a pyramid too. No. His objection is like this, for example, about losing money. He speaks well even. About deception and doesn't want to be deceived. So I'm clarifying. Am I understanding correctly? It's very clear. You need to clearly understand, yes, where. That is, which question you will be answering. So I already understood that it's about losing money, and I don't want to be deceived again. This is an abstract thing. Let's clarify further. I'll say, Artem, please tell me, do you want to get excited about something and then feel empty because you built some plans, and accordingly, everything falls apart from your plans? And then looking people in the eyes and all that. Excellent. Good. Then accordingly, at this stage, we can move on to a more or less detailed discussion. Look at the answer. Firstly, we have official registrations, various aspects, including international certifications, and we have a public leadership. That is, the founder himself regularly communicates with people, regularly interacts with leaders, and takes the stage at events. So, many people have interacted with him, can ask him questions directly, and so on. The goal is not to make money because he is a very wealthy person. He has a grand mission level goal. The third point, what we are creating according to what is stated in the presentation. That is, we are building a large ecosystem of products. And here we can show a set of products, some of which are in beta version, some are still being developed. And so Artem, look, I can indeed make you the following offer. I understand that you have been deceived before. I understand that you have lost money with you somewhere. Nevertheless, I understand that you know what affiliate programs are and they inspire you. And if you were confident in this company, you would be building with great pleasure. You would feel fulfilled and energetic in business. This is the essence of being a king. Artem, please answer my question. Yes, that's correct. Then I suggest you do the following. You can register with our company for $50. That's a little over 4,000 rubles. Let's register you. And at the same time, I'll register you on our exchange, our wallet. You will get to know these products. And I only need one thing from you. First, it means that you will at least attend the meeting once a week. And second, that you will attend the training at least once a week. And when you realize that this company truly does what it says, and this company it is moving in that direction, which can lead you to your success. This company is worthy of your trust. Only after that can you start actively moving forward. But Artem, unfortunately, I will not give you money. I will not give you money. For one simple reason, I really don't want to consider you helpless. Because I consider you a strong person, a person who has dealt with a huge number of your complex life issues, and a person who deserves to be a full-fledged partner. If I give you money, then I will be the one calling the shots. And I don't want that kind of relationship with you. I want to be with you not for money, but for love. Do you understand, Artem? Together we can create much more than any bot stories. I sincerely tell you. Register for $50. It exists. It exists in every person. And just give the company time and opportunity to get to know you. And after that, you will understand what is needed. And if not, well, at least you lost no more than $50 and answered Artem's questions. We can now come to the answer to the question of where to find people. This too. Let's do everything, but we can answer. So, let's try to analyze the text. Look, friends, please respond in the chat. It's important. I clarified if I understood correctly, and I listened to Artem. Clarify if he understood correctly. Here they are right here. Here. I was subtitles made by Dimitrorzok. Rules of patience. I didn't say that, yes. You already annoyed me with your stupid things. I've been talking to you for half a year, saying it's not a pyramid. So there was nothing like that. I asked clarifying questions, and I did not object. I always aligned myself with him. I did not conflict at any moment. I said, yes, I will not give you money. I will not give you money because I am for you. And so on. You understand? Well, that is. So we only had Artem listening. He said it honestly, it was going. Where to find people? Well, so thank you. Support there is great. So where to find people? I don't know how to speak beautifully. You don't need to speak beautifully. You need to speak from yourself. Because if in my life I have read many, many books, if I have done a lot there, been involved, higher education, a lot of everything. What I studied, yes, my speech, accordingly, it may be a bit more a bit more enriched with some spices, seasonings, and turns of phrase. But at the same time, if you are a guy from the factory and you start speaking, gentlemen, I have a most fascinating proposal, within which I would like to delight all the noble people present here, the noble organization, just like all the people who are sitting in the smoking area at the factory right now, and tell you about the presentations. Hivan lives through one crypto spring, and but this is, I don't know, Tayomich, you must have fallen off the oak tree. One of the remarkable leaders of the company, Oli, has landed. On the other hand, if you say here you are at the factory, you can say a person says something like this. I'm not for pyramids, not just pyramids, but you make reports with your brains. You can say then, right? In factory terms that you're using your brains, register for 50. Take a look, figure out karate. Not in karate. You haven't lost anything, but you can say it like that correctly and it will be there. But this is a very important point. Communicate with people naturally, object to the form. The form, it is, well, it matters, but first and foremost, it should be congruent. This is the moment of understanding. Let's move on. I skipped a bit. Accordingly, every expressed statement, localize the objection for you. Make it short and concise. Respond substantively for the documents in a language understandable to the person. Before voicing the next one, it's important to ensure that the previous one was heard and correctly understood. The potential partner must agree with your arguments. When I was responding to Artem, he had two objections. First, again, the pyramid. Second, there's no one to invite, or borrow money. Borrow money, he said, right? And I didn't start talking about borrowing money until I understood that he was, in principle, kind of ready to try. Understandable, right? Because many people, they try to answer the question, which is easier. That is, who has watched the movie Some Like It Hot? And there was such a wonderful handling of objections at the end when Daphne and the billionaire are riding on a boat. They watched, thinking the billionaire is riding on a boat. I'm not a catch. I snore. Nothing terrible. I have that. I don't know. There, someone says, don't worry, we'll find ourselves on it. And while I'm cooking, we'll hire. Then, and so on. So she throws objections at him. Throws, and he addresses all of them. And finally says, I am a man with my flaws. Yes. Thank you, Marina. And so, well, yes, and the plot, it turns out, is a bit revealed because we don't know whether the man knew this or not, and so on. Next, the point is that each objection is addressed in turn. This is important. This is important so that they are clearly laid out in the person's mind. And this is it. Answer this, answer that, answer this one, to be continued. And when you lay them out, usually no more than 2 or 3 objections occur. That is, he understands here, you, for now, you are in charge here, you can. So, now friends, just for a second. Aha, so. Strange.
dear moderator, please download, but with the slides, at some point I can't manage. For some reason. Oh, there.
So, friends, I apologize. Just a moment. A small technical glitch, please. Can you hear me at all? So, now we should have a very good connection because the cable. Wait, please. Which screen do you see now? I see the slides. So, good. So, I have a question. NV Global pays out 8 to 12% a month. Where does the money come from, Dim? Says Gennady. And please tell me, is this a question for me right now, for me to answer? Or is it a question for the general pool of frequently asked questions we are preparing? Because on one hand, it seems like you weren't at the presentation. If you were at the presentations, then you assume that I most likely won't say anything beyond the official information. If it's a frequently asked question, fine. Let's just add it to the general list. In short, we show there, we show where we generate money from, and so on. Well, friends, let's move on. Here's what I would like to tell you, that often a potential partner answers their own questions, which were voiced in advance. If you listen carefully, take a small pause before responding. This is an important point because many people ask questions, for example, provocative ones. Or if you slow down a little, if you slow down a little, you will at least be able to understand what they are implying, because they will either start to elaborate on it or answer it themselves. And this is very important because many people, when faced with objections, tend to boil over. Please write in the chat if anyone has experienced this. For example, when you say something to someone and they respond to you, and you are so outraged by their distrust and the fact that they question your words, that you start to boil over. And you feel that the meeting is not going according to plan at all. Because the person starts to enjoy being able to irritate you. You have no idea how I used to argue with people. But Elena, for example, says that to better understand a person, I ask again what they mean by their statement. This is what I also explain here. Tatiana used to get very heated. It's really a strong thing. I also used to get really angry for several years. I conducted very aggressively pointless negotiations. That was 17 years ago. It was very frightening. Elena is also called a girl with experience here. You can rephrase his question and he will gladly answer himself. Dmitry writes that sometimes a person wants to blend in and asks questions, even if the question is completely off topic, for example. But you know that, for instance, if you're talking about having something exclusive, you'd better use black, for example. And this, like terracotta in presentations, but your presentation is blue and purple, which doesn't match the color scheme with retrograde Mercury, so I won't subscribe. So that's why such nonsense. Therefore, try to remain calm as much as possible. And here's the digital ministry license. Yes, it's amazing, amazing. Really great. Thank you, Ilya. I'm glad I provided you with some spicy opportunities. So let's move on. Look, there are true objections and there are false objections. And it's important to understand this. There are very few true objections. In our industry, they are very, very few. And they look as follows. First, I'm afraid of losing money. Second, I won't succeed. Third, well, it's a scam, a pyramid scheme, and so on. Fourth, everything is fine with me. I don't need anything. And fifth, accordingly, what will other people think? Dennis, I'll say what I think. She is hidden behind one of these objections. This is a false objection. Because when a person needs to think, it means they lack information, and if they lack information, they will seek it. The nearest source of information is you sitting opposite them. So the simplest way for a person who says, I'll think about it, then the simplest way is to ask, do you have a person who will tell them, a person who is a source of information? But when they say, I'll think about it, it means you haven't yet gotten to their real reasons. So, here are the 5 main ones. I'm afraid of losing money. I won't be able to do it. It's a scam. I'm doing fine as it is. Friends, I hope you remember this wonderful gentleman, Mr. Belyakov from Voronezh. And what will everyone think? Could it be that someone has no money? An excuse, I'll think about it. Look, let's analyze a very detailed moment. Dennis, please get ready to write now. I will be asking you questions directly. Dennis, imagine that you have no money and you were offered this topic and you're not afraid of losing money. You don't think you won't succeed, that it's a scam, that you can't say that everything is great because you have no money and you basically don't care what people think. Please tell me, would you find a way to start? If none of these points I mentioned are present, Dennis, please write it down. Or let's Dennis turn on the broadcast. Dear moderator, please connect Dennis, if Dennis doesn't mind. So we are addressing the question. All right, I won't bother you, but let's sort this out. Write in the chat what everyone thinks. Look, let's assume you have no money and you are given an offer to earn money. Please tell me if all these points listed here are covered. Are you ready to start? I will go find $50. What is the minimum I can start with? So once when I was in a product company, they told me something amazing. My superior mentor, when I explained that there was no money, meaning if a person is financially savvy with borrowed funds, they won't enter. This is a very strange statement. A very strange statement. In general. That is, it's something like, why does a cat have 5 legs? Honestly, I can tell you, for probably 15 years, the last time I didn't get into debt. That is, I consider myself more or less as a person who knows how to earn money, but I don't consider myself financially literate. Very much so when they didn't get into debt, you didn't buy me property or a car, and there some benefits of civilization, and I never did it on credit, for example. But I see absolutely no problem in starting a business with borrowed money. Here another question arises if this person wants to enter. Wants to enter, for example, perhaps a business to be a passive investor. Wait, Andre, a guru of financial literacy. That's great. So you changed the paradigm. We have 2 proposals. We have a proposal for essentially clients. That is, these are people who, let's be honest, a person who borrows money to invest in a company and do nothing, live off the interest. He is not a very literate person, moreover. I would say he is a person who considers himself cunning, but in reality, he is clueless. Because if you don't have money, come and earn it. As Dimitri writes, the task is to come in and, for example, mine. Therefore, investing borrowed money is stupid. You can earn from referrals with just $50. For example, here we have Anton from Tomsk, who didn't have any spare money, but he started with $50, invited a few people, and earned some money. And he upgraded to a business package and is now building a team, planning to qualify for a summer trip and so on. There is no spare money, but anyone can find $50. Absolutely. I'm telling you again about this business. If the minimum goal is to start with $50, the optimal goal is to enter with a business package and earn a lot of money. You can invest the money earned from referrals, for example, in investments and so on, to create a deposit for yourself without any problems. This can be done. Just stop counting people if you are inviting people only for passive income. That's right, Andre. If a person doesn't have money, you create an offer tailored to their needs. They don't have money to invest, so let's earn some money. Then you simply change the paradigm of the offer. That's all I understand. It's wonderful that we have found common ground. All right? Good. And people who come to earn money are actually more valuable than those who are ready to invest in a lump sum. Because with a lump sum, we have a maximum of 50,000. And a clever guy who wants to earn can make $1 million, 15, 20, and so on. So everything is just great. So let's break it down. Now we've come to the question of handling objections. The first stage, agreement. Step 1, focus. What magical thing can we use to talk to a person? Yes, of course, you are right. It's possible. And I admit it. Actually, that's what we started with Andre. Yes, Andre agrees that investing borrowed money is foolish. But then we started talking about something else. When Artem said our company, in short, there's a pyramid, or there were some other points he mentioned, I said, yes, of course. Yes, of course, I agree with you. Perhaps such a situation, such a development of events, and at the same time look from that side, see how it works. Understood? Yes. The first stage, agreement. Please write down who understands what and ensure it is meticulously documented. Friends, moving on to the next point. Please don't say the word no. Abruptly, it's harmful. It's better to gently adapt to the person's opinion. So that it's more comfortable for them to perceive your point of view, we are not going to deceive them. We are not going to deceive them in any way. We are not going to strongly influence them or anything else. It's just important for us to be heard. And for that, we need to build bridges, not destroy them. And therefore, we find an approach so if we start to conflict with a person, they go on the defensive. If they go on the defensive, it will be difficult to break through. For example, Artem says, it's better to send them away with love. And this is indeed a very powerful technique. But in order to send someone away with love, and they sincerely understood your message, you must have a powerful energy and a close with him, a very close connection with him, so that he clearly understands that at this very moment, you are on his side. Because otherwise you will just create a conflict. Then that's it. It will be such a moment. It is very important to demonstrate support and attention to his point of view. A person, for some reason, has lived to his age believing this way. That is good. It didn't just come from nowhere. Something happened in his life. We cannot be dismissive of his life. His experience that suggests this to him. Venus, well, you are a strict woman, I must say. We will call you back. Now master this wonderful phrase as well, or our HR will call you back. I don't know. I am still an advocate for communicating with a person as correctly as possible. If he doesn't behave like a complete brute, then you can have a pleasant conversation with any person. Because look, what concept am I promoting? It's very important that you like this business. If you go into it like a battle each and every single time, you will get extremely tired and worn out mentally and physically, absolutely and completely exhausted, without a doubt. This happened in my life. Therefore, at this very specific moment, I don't recommend anyone to engage in intense and aggressive persuasion. Because the more energy you spend, the statistics most likely will be roughly the same. The effectiveness of fierce and calm handling of objections, for example, is the same. But the energy expenditure is completely different. And if after each meeting you find yourself lying on the couch staring at the ceiling, wondering why you need all this for the sake of a $50 commission, then this story might end quickly and you'll say, forget it. So, further on, well, The entire men, both the curator and I, were invited to a meeting because of how we conducted it, but in the end, we fixed everything, shook hands, and it went well. Business. Emotions lead to nothing good. Emotions, especially uncontrolled emotions, lead to problems. It doesn't come like that. Yes. Therefore, when we talk about we adapt what we agree with the person and move on. Stage 2, transition. Phase 2, in order to make a smooth transition to the next stages, we need to build a bridge transition. The next expression. That's why at the same time, and for this, we try not to use the phrase but. You can come up with alternatives on your own. There are many options, but we need to conduct sharp alternatives like and or but we do not use. We repeat, do not use them because they make the phrase contradictory, and we consider the option that we are still trying to make a proper adaptation. And so on, and so forth. Therefore, look, let's say once again, a person raises an objection, you agree with their thoughts, but not with their objection. That is he, because this pyramid, you can say, yes, it is a pyramid, it is a strong statement. But firstly, it does not correspond to the truth. And secondly, it too strongly confirms the partner's opinion. Therefore, for example, he says, this is a pyramid, you say, absolutely right. Many people might think so. You understand, right? There is a difference. There is a difference in this. Many people might think so. That is why I would like to explain it to you in more detail. Or we have factors that fundamentally distinguish us from a pyramid. Or, and for this, we have a this, and this. Moreover, the examples can be different. I will tell you right away. When I mastered the technique of handling objections, and I somehow arrived in the city of Magnitogorsk, and there were these serious guys sitting. They had recently come into the business, all guys serious, all from the street neighborhoods, and as it were, they didn't take a guy in a suit seriously. I then said, look, you went with your girlfriend somewhere on a date. Your task is to ensure that the date ends in a certain way. And then I started to analyze. For example, she says, no, I don't want this or that. And instead of getting offended, you say, okay, I agree that many people think I'm the same as usual. And that's exactly why I have a great offer for you. For example, and so on. There you go. And the guys from Magnitogorsk started actively recording because we started speaking genuinely, useful things. Although it would seem to make money, this path is even faster. So, why am I saying this? To the point that skills in handling objections and negotiations can be useful in absolutely any field. Just like for someone, they were useful at a gangster meeting. For someone, they are useful on a date. Someone makes money with them, and someone even stops arguing with their wife. And this is important. This is important. And this forms in you, accordingly, the image of a more mature, stable person. This is invaluable. So, we move on to the third stage. Argumentation. Argumentation. And at this stage, we take and put forward a thesis that is superior in strength. It must certainly be in favor of our proposal. Or some alternative. For example, when we analyzed Artem's thesis that he doesn't want to lose money, or something else, and if anything, he's ready to register under someone else's, which basically confirms that he doesn't want to lose money at all. Even 5,000. He doesn't want to be deceived, even for 5,000. And we addressed this objection. And so, for example, we proposed registration. Well, in our case, we proposed registration for $50 and adding to chats and accordingly to schools. The person thought he would be persuaded, actively pushed, so we offered him an intermediate option for a smooth entry. He is satisfied because he is not being forced, and we are satisfied because we have a new partner who is maturing and already has a good attitude towards us. Do you understand, right? Friends, please write how clear this is. Clear. Clear. Excellent. It seems like nothing complicated. Pay attention. Many do not make it to this point. Many, well, not in the sense that they don't survive physically. They survive figuratively, of course. The conversation no longer flows. Next, stage 4. This is either a question or a call to action. Let's do this. Next. In the next stage, we lead our potential partner to further actions. And this should be done with the help of several points. First, for example, a question. That is, what amount are you ready to try? Because we have addressed the objection. Look, this is the logic. Address the objection without stirring the waters, ensuring the person remains comfortable. Well, basically, yes, I agree. That is, he doesn't feel offended. He doesn't feel like he has won over you or that you begged him for something. But it's very important to move on. The direct action and this transition to action goes through either a question, a call to action, and so on. For example, you explain to a person, he's at the pyramid, you explain to him, and he's like, okay, basically, I agree. Let's register for free, but in the sense of paying for me, you explain to him, and he says, all right, I agree, let's register. And how much are you willing to try with? Many people, the very fact that registering for $50 is the minimum. And I really like it. Moreover, you can offer their $50, not for anything, $500 for a trial. He only said, let's at least try with $100. Well, let's assume you just raised from 50 to 100 points out of nowhere, while in the previous scenario, it was 50. You had to cover it with your own money, but here, $100 have already come to you. That's a different story. Next, and a call to action. A call to action. Register, pay, let's go to the meeting. Depending on the situation. Sometimes you need to push hard. Well, just focus. Let's go to my place. Well, for creative people, I'm saying right away. So, for example, when all the questions are discussed, it's like you need the specific call to action. What are we doing? Let's go to my place to register. I mean, school is starting soon. Dima Polonov is conducting it there. Very useful. If you feel that the person hasn't fully warmed up yet, it's better to ask a question. Because with this question, you can see where they still have objections. If the desire is basically formed, then you need to specifically move to actions. Please tell me, is this clear? Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Next. Let's go through some points with an example. Here's an objection. I already know how to earn money. And let's go through it quickly. Thesis. The person says, yes, I know how to do it. Elena, I ask you, please don't post such fantasies in the chat. In principle, this is sometimes used. But this is what is called overdoing it. Overdoing it pressuring, and so on. I personally build a business based on a different concept. That is, it's very important to me that there is clear interaction within our team. And I never try to pressure someone before they sign up. And moreover, I apply pressure on my partners, but only when we have agreed on it. This is an important point. So, let's get back to the question. I already know how to earn well, says your counterpart. You say, great. Agree with him. Adapt. I see that you are successful and goal-oriented, or that's why I'm offering it to you, because you know how to earn. You are a successful person. That's exactly why. All right, let's move on to the argument. I am offering you this business because it's not a business for the poor, for those with nowhere to go, but for people who know how to earn, and now most importantly, strive for more than what they have now. And that's why you can achieve a goal that you haven't planned yet. And immediately move on to the question. Have you been to the NV Global presentation? There you will be able to learn more about this business. Is it clear roughly how it looks? Friends? Objections? Oh, grabbed, stretched, through, gave a counter. Aikido, judo. Yes, right. Yes, once we are not blocking it. On the contrary, we are extending it. Yes, yes, yes. So yes, it's all not serious. Absolutely true. Many people think so, many people think so. But nevertheless, if you see and almost get acquainted with the contingent, you will understand that only very narrow-minded people think so, a group to which you do not belong. So let's sort it out at our presentation. By the way, today, such and such is performing various different types of performances and acts in a variety of ways, and so on and so forth. Understood. Let's then analyze the nuances of handling false objections. This is exactly where I'll look. There's no time there. All sorts of things like that. These are false objections. Alongside real ones, false ones are often used, which are formed unconsciously. For example, someone is afraid of others' opinions and is ashamed to admit it. Or he doesn't have money and is ashamed to say it. That is, there might be other such moments. These are false objections. Therefore, we with you, the first thing you need to understand is to determine how to distinguish. In fact, if you recall the 5 true objections that we discussed, and if you learn to respond to these 5, you will be able to close almost any deal. Because everything else just needs to be brought to any of these 5 options. Because they are naturally connected. For example, no money. No money. This is a false objection. Very often people think it's true. Because, well, the person really doesn't have money. How? Can they enter a company where they need to invest in something else? And this is a problem whose solution can be turned into a goal. And if we understand how this works, then we start, offering it directly to them. It becomes a solution to our conversation. This is important to them. That's why I'm suggesting to you, let's earn. For example, there are, accordingly, objections. I need to think. At the moment, I'm not ready to make a decision. I don't need anything. And there are many more false objections. They are not always easy to recognize. But behind every objection lies a true objection. Fear of losing money, fear of what others will think, fear that MLM won't work, and so on. I think this point is clear. Let's go over it again. There are quite a few main objections. For example, I need to think, I'm not sure I'm ready to decide at the moment, I don't need anything, and so on. However, many false objections can be identified and reduced to true objections. That is, I'm afraid of losing money. I'm afraid of MLM, of what people will think, and so on and so forth. Next, to distinguish one from the other, you need to have certain experience in communicating with a potential partner. And at the same time, it's important to understand that you shouldn't waste money and energy dealing with false objections. It's just pointless work. Understood? Friends, please respond. I know that many people are overworking themselves. They say, oh my, I have meetings here, there, oh there. But most often, many people fall into the trap that is generally called, it's easy to be busy. It's not easy to be effective. And if you spend your time effectively, an hour, 2, 3, every day, for example, right? Then you will earn decent money. Decent growing money. Most importantly, you will be setting the right traditions in your team. Therefore, it is important to understand what the true objection is and respond to it specifically, without engaging in idle chatter. Talking about how in retrograde Mercury, the blue spots on the screen, on the slides, mean much more than in some other thing. Well, I mean, that's nonsense. I mean, please don't go into detail about that. So Dimitri writes, many questions will be resolved when showing the withdrawal of funds. There is a big motivation there. Honestly, I must say that no, there are different contingents. While we haven't moved on yet, I'll leave it here. There are different types of people. There are people, let's call it, with magical thinking. There are people with thinking that is, let's say, digital, mathematical, in other words, with different types of concreteness. So if you show, for example, the withdrawal of funds, certain people will say, well, yes, in principle, the money comes and that's it. But there is a fairly large contingent of people who are indeed quite valuable to us because they can structurally build large systems. I consider myself one of them. For example, my first question is, where do they come from? That is the withdrawal of funds. Where do these funds come from? Because money doesn't smell, that's great. But by understanding where they come from, you can at least assess potential risks. You see, so therefore, well, and plus, but I have seen my share of life, and I fully understand that it's hard to impress me with money. I want to understand how the system works. I want to work. I want to understand where the money comes from, how it is formed, what the plans are, what the tasks are, why this is so, why it's not a lie, and so on. This is important. That is, I'm not one of those people who sincerely believe that I deserve money. And I chose there. I don't throw out trash after 6 p.m. And it's like, what else is there? We'll come up with something. I avoid black cats, and that's why money should come to me. And if it comes to me now, that's how it should be. Yes, I won't record business after 6 p.m. You see, that's my position. I need to understand, figure it out, and so on. But if I understand and figure it out, I can explain what the importance and value are. Therefore, for example, if someone can explain the model to me, for instance, I don't care. I don't need to understand that a person has a big check. If a person explained the model to me, they can explain it to anyone. Well, there's logic in that. Therefore, the story with when you show a check, most often it's either the last argument or you just haven't managed in the professional field yet. To show checks and say, here, sign up, I have this and that. That's my personal position. Therefore, it's important to understand what the objection is and essentially to deal with it. You see, I had an experience when when I initially earned little, but I did a lot. There were schools, I did training, formed teams, so we were forming. And then at some point it became so much that it was already difficult to show. But what's the point of showing if you have a very expensive car? For example, there are 3 of them in the family. Well, for instance, yes. What's the point of going around and telling how much you earn? None. Always. I never told how much I earn. It doesn't matter how much I earned. $1,000, $500, I don't know, $100,000. I never told. It never bothered me for some reason. Therefore, if someone tells you that they need to load a lot of money first to show everyone that they've loaded it, and without this they won't start a business, then they are not professional enough. Maybe it makes sense to explain this to them. That intention and the right understanding of how to build a business are much more valuable than some well, it's all about putting on a show, creating an illusion, because putting on a show works on very simple-minded people in reality. But to attract worthy and intelligent people, just putting on a show is not enough. I'll be honest with you, I can take a screenshot of my personal account and draw $10 billion there. Well, it's editable, you know? You can draw anything you want. Absolutely. But if you can't string 2 words together, if you can't convey a message to someone, then because you were counting on showing a number and expecting everything to fall into place. But undoubtedly, there are women who are willing to show a man favor simply because he actually has abs. But then again, we can certainly indeed imagine how one might perhaps possibly regard such women. For example, Alex started with $200. Now he has $150 or $160 or $200,000 in turnover. I don't remember. He started with $200. Artem Yurzin also started with something small. I started with 50. Now I have invested several tens of thousands, roughly speaking. But if at the same time, you, actually, here's Dima, for example, now he has a business package and a structure. There I also contributed about 60,000, something like that. You need to understand correctly. It's very important to clearly understand what you are doing, where you are going, what you are offering, and for this, absolutely not. And if you have invested an amount that is significant for you, everything, let's designate it for ourselves. If someone can easily throw in $10,000 and not worry, they can do so without worrying. For example, for you, $50 or $100 or $1,000 was significant. Then go ahead and say it. I invested an amount that is significant for me. Everything is fine. I hope I answered that question. Let's go. Let's move on. So, engage in a debate. A pointless story. You must not do this under any circumstances. Persistently insist on agreeing with your point of view. A cruel thing. Very similar to mental rape. There. You need to do this carefully and subtly, so that he accepts your position without pressure. Well, I mean, sort of. Everything should be done with love. That's what I call it. So, then don't give the opportunity to speak or ask questions during the presentation. This is a big mistake. It's just when you keep pushing in the park, he understands it doesn't matter what he says here. It will not be perceived. It will not be valuable. It will not be interesting. And therefore, accordingly, he just waits for the conversation to end. And even if he agrees to sign just to get rid of you, demonstrating a lack of knowledge or a gap, both, at some point, something you don't know about the company, it's not very good, figure it out. Please, at the moment in the company, if you have a specific question you can't answer, you can say, I can't answer this question with 100% certainty. Well, I have some ideas, but let me note down this question and I'll definitely get back to you with an answer after consulting with my superior. Or we can involve the superior at this moment. That is, the person should receive information about the company. The person should receive everything necessary because he simply, well, you are establishing a partnership with him, you understand? Partnership. You shouldn't just take his money. You need to build a team with him. This is drastically different from the usual, like throw in the money and leave. Therefore, that's the story. Next, what other mistake? It's not perceiving him as a person. A potential partner, if we don't perceive him as a person, we just see him as living money. If you remember, there was this Tom and Jerry, or something like that. Well, those Disney cartoons and so on, when the main character looked at something like, well, I mean, like dollars in the eyes. Maybe you've seen those. Like in cartoons, dollars in the eyes. Oh, dollars in the eyes. And so dollars in the eyes, if a person feels that your entry into the business is just for you to score a referral, that's very bad. That's very, very, very bad. Yes. So, another big mistake is being afraid to respond to objections, acting indecisively, agreeing with everything, such behavior. For inexperienced network marketers, gradually you become more confident, and I congratulate you, because being able to handle a business proposal, you will undoubtedly feel much more confident anywhere. Whether you are buying something in a store, for example, or in other situations. You will become a person who finds it very easy to get a discount because you become a significant customer. Simply your level in the eyes of others rises if you are confident, if you have a well-articulated speech, if you can communicate effectively. And all of this comes directly with practice. It's really great. I'll tell you some examples. Once I was buying a car, it was in 2017. It was an expensive car. It cost around 7 million rubles and some change. I bought it for 6. I had to negotiate, but I didn't beg for it, because if I had begged, they wouldn't have given it. That's the story. I saved on a one-room apartment in Chelyabinsk. It was a really cool experience. There are people who know this story. So, moving on. Next point. If you think that an objection is a refusal, then you are wrong. In most cases, an objection is very good. It means that the person is ready to discuss the topic. The person is ready to allow a different interpretation. Because if a person says a firm no, and that's it, then it's a no. And with experience, you'll even be able to handle this kind of dispute. It's important to understand this because in general, it is important to note that you need to understand that even a categorical refusal is also divided into several subclasses. We won't talk about this now, but remember this. All the people who have refused you, even in an explicit form, an implicit form, and so on, we will be able to communicate with all of them in the future. For the second, third time, you will learn how to do this, to make them ask questions themselves, to make them become interested on their own, to engage them, and so on. All of this, certainly, we will succeed. The most important thing you must do is not to quarrel with people, except in cases where they behave disrespectfully and somehow tarnish your honor. You understand, right? But we won't be discussing this point in detail today. In a few words, I'll explain that if a person, some kind of direct, speaks very poorly about your choice, your team, what you are doing, and so on, then this is at least a reason to tell them that this offends you. For example, a person says, it's there a pyramid, you explain to him. He says, yes, no, it's still a pyramid. And then you have the right to ask him a question. Am I correct in understanding that you are now calling me a scammer and a deceiver? Why? Because I am explaining to you how it works, and you continue to ignore my words. So either I'm lying or you're not listening. Please tell me, are you calling me right now? Well, a scammer who is trying to deceive you or not, that is. But for example, and yes, that is this. If a person, well, yes, then our conversation is over. We are unlikely to be able to truly build a team and make a lot of money together, because we lack the most important thing needed for this, which is trust. So, Dimitri, let's not move into sexism. Therefore, the thesis of female, no, that's yes, but later. Look, let's suppose you have a wife. A man approaches her and says, hello, let's go to the movies. She says no. And you're like, haha. That's yes, but later. But that's a no. That's a no, am I right? So let's not generalize. And mine? Wait, Dimitri, so you're saying that now my wife is promiscuous? Or for example, not mine, but for instance, any person from the chat. Do you feel how you're digging yourself deeper? Well, Dimitri, that was undoubtedly a joke. It's just an illustration of how you can ask someone to come back down to earth. Friends? You got it, right? So purely illustrative. So let's move on. Ah, yes, we've arrived. We've arrived, yes. Therefore, I want to tell you this. Friends, we definitely have ahead of us. At least I strongly believe in this. Many years of work ahead. And if we understand that we are together anyway, moving somewhere, let's try to learn a little something so that these many years of work will be more effective. Therefore, I would like to do the following if possible. Please write down a list of objections you have encountered right now. Just sit and think about it. Well, no, I'm referring to the school. Write in the general chat, yes, certainly. But for example, let's make the list right now. Let's record it this hour. The moderator will copy everything, and so that we have it formed, there's I don't believe. Let's write it in more detail. Well, what exactly don't you believe in? You don't believe in yourself, or you don't know. You don't believe in the company, or you don't believe in crypto or in. I don't believe that reptilians will allow us to make money. I'll start with a bit more specific speed. Excellent. So let's add more friends. We are now creating a basis together, and then we will prepare based on it. It's very useful that we all have a set. People don't believe me. No money. Excellent. Dear moderator, hide the pie with us. It turns out everything is copied. No money. Let's add more. This is another scam. Good. So, I don't believe you. It's just that you might also be mistaken. Excellent. And what else can we be mistaken about together and make money? So, you can also respond, listen, I admit that you might also be mistaken in thinking that way. It's just that this brings me money, and for you only doubts, since you are licensed in Russia. There are many such companies. I already earn Companies like these don't last long. I don't believe traders achieve such results. You were in the previous company yourself, and it closed down. By the way, this moment is interesting. While you're writing, I can say, listen, yes, indeed, I was in a company where we achieved great results. And this happened in my life. But each of us has had moments when we believed, were deceived. And it's not quite the same when, for example, you've been somewhere once or twice. I can just talk about myself. Let's do it this way. It doesn't just come. I'll just talk about myself. So in 1817, no, well, 2007, actually. Yes. So 18 or 19 years. I have been in this industry, and the vast majority of my companies were related to products, meaning not investment based. In general, they were not good. Yes, I had the experience of a major scam. For example, there was a major scam. It's real, but at the same time, I believe that, well, you can build something low risk. And there are people who go into companies that are clearly scams, and they go there, especially simply. Well, it's just like, I don't know, like in a casino, for example. And this is just a different way of looking at things, for instance. But it seems to me, considering that I know how many companies grow, develop, and last for decades. So I understand that NV Global can also operate for decades. The only thing is that it won't indefinitely provide a large passive income. It's important to understand it's not infinite, but it can develop more and more. In fact, the main money we will earn will be when there are no liabilities, when there is no passive income. That's when it will be interesting. For example, for this reason. So let's see what you've written here. So black scam, you might be mistaken. There are many such companies licensed in Russia. And by the way, I haven't seen such a thing. A lot. So I earn personally anyway, if money remains from that and is transferred. Such companies don't last long. But objectively, the companies you're talking about don't last even 3 to 4 months. So a year and 7 months is a long time. About the companies I'm talking about, those that are 30, 40, 50 years old. We're just at the beginning of the journey. So we need to understand which companies we're talking about. I don't believe that traders trade with such results. So look at the results. So you were in the previous company yourself. It closed down, and I answered yes. That's so wonderful. Artem, you say you were in the previous company yourself, and it closed down. I'm absolutely sure, Artem, that with your first beloved woman, girlfriend, when you met in your youth, it didn't work out either. And most likely, maybe it didn't work out with the second one either. But that didn't give you a reason to switch to boys, claiming that all girls are the same. So today, the conditions, tomorrow, the conditions in the company have changed. The conclusion was what we are doing, but in general, what you are saying about the conclusion has become more like a scam story. Therefore, this is one thing, but tomorrow the conditions are different. This is a normal story. That is, for example, we had certain conditions, thank you. That is, there was a non-refundable deposit, or rather not refundable, but the interest rate was higher. Now the interest rate is lower, but the deposit is refundable. In essence, clients started receiving even more if you look at the weather. Therefore, all the changes that are happening in the business have been added there so far. Some updates to marketing will be made now. They will be done to make things better, not worse. So we will do everything it pleases. Everyone says the same thing. If someone tells you this, there are two who respond like that. Most likely you speak just like Putin to another company. Perhaps it makes sense for you to discuss this with your mentor. What exactly is cryptocurrency? What are these digital numbers? How will you use them in your life? At a magnificent moment, here all companies say that it's illegal. The best registration indicator is all in the mat. So here's this interesting moment. But the registration is all great. That is, for example, there might be a registration supposedly in London for 100 euros, yes. It seems like it's in London, but it's in a garage and for 100 euros. Or it could be a huge office, 2-story, beautiful, branded, where governors are invited. And right in the city center, well, almost in the city center, and at the same time, there's also the charter capital. There it's $220,000 and so on, but the most important thing is something else. You need to understand the business model. If the business model is working, if what is claimed matches what is being claimed, then this is a much more substantial proof than directly in investments. Every one of your companies is the best on the market. Yes, absolutely. And every girl I date is the most beautiful. So, moving on. I don't believe that all trades are only positive. How can you verify that the mining farm belongs to the company president? Well, it's a great opportunity to come to Turkey and see it all with your own eyes. The government will shut down your business by declaring it a financial pyramid, even if you are genuinely doing something beneficial and want to set you up. It depends on which government. If we are talking about the Russian Federation, it would have shut it down long ago and declared it a financial pyramid. And yet, it doesn't seem to stop anyone from moving forward and earning. And if we are talking about other countries like Europe, Paraguay, the Philippines, and so on, everything is actively developing. All is wonderful and problematic. Therefore, look, the same government declared Instagram a terrorist organization and believes that you believed it. But still, everyone is on Instagram. Why? That is to say, we look at the school in 4 leaders. Excellent. The main thing is to give them 4. You rarely sit like this. A class of execution to live through. I have an allergy to people who offer, sell me something. How difficult it is for you living in a cave somewhere far outside the city and without a single piece of clothing, without anything else. It's just great. He brought plant soup with him. It's quite inexpensive. If you take 2 tablets, you get 3 for the price of 2. Yes, 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 by the way, a good answer. The moderator is cool, with a sense of humor in general. So, excellent. An allergy to people who offer to sell me something. Well, Tatiana, look, a good question. I just started answering. I say, look, one way or another, we have a consumer society, and one way or another, you buy a lot of things every month. And in order for you to have more opportunities to buy what you want, and to ensure that the attitude and service towards you are much higher, it might make sense to earn more. And as a person who has a negative attitude towards any attempt to hustle, involve, or deceive, you will be perceived by your surroundings as a great example. Coming into a company, and you need to take a closer look at this company. This is an important point, because if you are lively and energetic, you can do anything for each other, whatever you like, so to speak, smooth things over, as we say in the Urals. Then people initially treat you with a bit of caution. If you are a person who doesn't like to offer, sell, and so on, you start some kind of business. It means this business is very respectable. Therefore, you can always turn it around very, very, very beautifully. So, well, all friends, let's now throw in 2 or 3 more objections that you've encountered, and then we'll directly move on to this. Well, we'll be wrapping up. Thank you, Artem. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Ho, ho, ho. Ready to come back later. No money. Excellent. I'll tell you. While you're writing, I'll share with you a few moments about how I encountered one of the toughest arguments. When I first joined my first network business, it was in 2007. At that time, I was earning 8,600 rubles. Well, As a chemist in a production laboratory, I was earning 8,600 rubles. I needed to sign up for 20,000 to buy a package of products. And I registered for free. At first, my upline calls me. He was from another city, from Yekaterinburg. And he's like, are you coming to the school for 200 points? And it was on a Monday. I said, when? He says, well, tomorrow on Tuesday. I said, yes, of course, I'm interested. He says, and when do you plan to register for 200 points? I said, well, I basically plan to do it by May. That is, in 5 months, I will save. And I can save half of my salary and accumulate in 5 months for a package of 20,000 rubles. He says, listen, let's consider this question. And if someone from your family, for example, got sick and you needed 20,000 for an operation, would you also say, let's wait? That's a tough argument. It needs to be used very wisely if necessary. But at that moment, I was just completely taken aback. I sat there thinking, really? What if? Andre, my superior, he said to me, try it. Try to find the money in one evening. At least you'll be sure that you can find money in one evening if necessary. And I found it. Although I remind you, it was how much? 2.5 times my salary. For example, that's a lot of money for me. I borrowed it all, managed to get it somehow, and everything turned out conveniently. And this is about the issue of not having money, and then being ready to join in later, but connecting later. And the second argument. This is also a very interesting point. From my superior, Andre, it was in the same company a long time ago in 2017. I had a Hummer. He had a Hummer, and when I was sitting there, he was telling someone, to my friend, whom he invited to the meeting, and he was talking about business opportunities in dietary supplements. And accordingly, but this is my friend, my friend who was Lyosha. He was skeptical. I don't have money, but I'll join later. And accordingly, no money, oh God, I'll join. And then Andre, my mentor, said, listen, you like my Hummer, right? Of course you do. What if I sell it to you right now for $1,000? But the offer is valid only until midnight today. Ready? To understand, they're of course ready, Andre MGL. Yes? You, without thinking, where will you get the money? Agreed. Because you know that you can find it by the end of the evening, even if you don't know how yet. But you definitely know you're ready. Therefore, if in this business you say that you can sign up for, say, $200, then probably you still haven't understood why. Let's better address these questions. Let's figure out what this business will give you and how you can buy a camera here, like I did. That's the story. There are different motivations, so it's a good question. Everything is great and cool. When you have personal results, you will show them to those above you, and I will come in. That is well, but I need partners, not clients. Certainly, now I am offering to become the one with whom we will create this together. And that's exactly why I'm inviting you now. How I can withdraw, how working on scripts, how I can see, how I can transfer the earned scripts to my card. But is it just on the internet? How to exchange? How to exchange the publisher? Well, in general, it's clear. You are writing questions now. You are very great, very cool guys. And we have been on the call for quite a while now. You are doing great. Almost everyone who joined stayed. So look, we are writing objections. like as if all the main ones have been written. Let's prepare a guide later. Then prepare. Accordingly, answers to the questions, and we will gradually figure it out. The most important thing is my big message. Understand what you are doing. It shows both your attitude towards the work, and the work will return to you much faster. It will return with its gratitude. You will earn a lot and it will be great. All the best. See you on Monday. Come, it will be interesting.